Okay, it's a brand new week, and the stories continue. Let's start this morning. We have a number of stories. Of course, first of all, Minister Dave Umahi, Minister of Works, coming out to justify road projects that have been done currently. We have seen a number of, launches and opening or reconstruction and construction of roads across the country. And he has come out to justify this, saying that it is necessary as part of the efforts of this administration to fight insecurity, and even made an economic, justification for it. One, he said that it would help to promote trans-Saharan trade and cross-border commerce. It would help with our relationship with the roads that lead to Chad and Cameroon, to be more specific. It would help the army with when it comes to fighting and chasing after these terrorists. And so this is part of efforts to, to fight insecurity in the country. And of course, we've often said that all hands on deck, all agencies, all ministries, every area, whether it's the kinetic part and the non-kinetic part, must be employed, fully deployed in the fight against insecurity. And so in recent times, there has been scrutiny and questions being asked around the importance of some of the road, massive infrastructural development and development, and the amount of money that has been channeled towards this development. But I think there are bigger questions for the Minister of Works this morning. Yes, he has said the right things and absolutely correct. You need infrastructure such as road to, as part of the fight against insecurity. We've often said it, and analysts have also opined that one of the reasons why, or some of the reasons why these crimes have persisted or terrorist attacks have persisted in this country is because in many regards they're ungoverned. Number two, they lack basic infrastructure, and so it makes it fertile ground for these terrorists to operate freely and unhindered. And so this is absolutely correct. But the questions that still exist, of course, would be that you can have a very great project initiative, you can justify it based on the need, critical need nationally. But we'll also still talk about transparency, which unfortunately for this government, it has been plagued with. Transparency and accountability. And this has occurred in many quarters. And it leads to the second story around the Ministry of Finance and the unaccounted over 8 trillion naira, which has been put at 2% of the budget. I'll come to that in a short while. Let me just talk about finish with the roadworks and some of the questions that still persist, which I believe the Ministry of Works needs to, still break down for Nigerians. Number one is, in the spirit of transparency and accountability, no one is saying don't build roads. No one is saying don't build concrete roads. Very fantastic. But due process has consistently been the challenge, where due process hasn't been followed. And we see this cut across a number of projects embarked on by this administration. When we talk about due process, what is the process by which the award contract was made? Was there a transparent and accountable bidding process? The conversation has been had around the company that has been awarded this contract, High Tech. There are controversies around the people backing this particular company. And so there are questions around that. Number two is that when it comes to one of the priority areas under this administration where money seems to be easily and quickly released is in infrastructure. I know some of them come from external borrowing, so you can understand that they are earmarked funding for these particular projects. But there seems to be an interest in this area because we seem to focus a lot on infrastructure and roads, and we don't do the same for, critical areas like health, like education. We talk about the minute amount of money that was a percentage of the capital expenditure towards health in the last cycle. We look at the education space, we look at contractors who have not been paid, and so there are big questions around that. The other thing, of course, would be oversight and projects whereby we have seen areas where the roads, even though constructed, hasn't yet, have already said to dilapidate. Thankfully, the minister has deployed, resources to ensure that they're able to investigate why this has happened. Now, the other thing then would be impact assessments, not just environmental impact assessment, but even other, the impact of building these roads and the connectivity of these roads. Do we have enough time? Has enough work been done in that regard? These are certain questions that I believe that whilst we justify the need for building this infrastructure, it is important to go back to that. Very quickly on finance, I think the key again, like I said, is on transparency and accountability. Yes, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy has come out to give a justification saying, oh, it's just a misrepresentation. But the big question will be then why do we not have a process where we have a unified reporting or accountability system, where whether it's rolling over or it is pre-existing, that we have to have this report by IMF and an independent investigation has to be done so that we can really, truly believe in the statements released by the minister. Rufai, your take on these stories.
So, a couple of things. Let me start with Mr. Umahi case. I mean, nobody has problems with doing roads. In fact, we want more roads. In fact, I'll argue this morning that we don't have enough roads. Over 920,000 square kilometers of land. I'm not sure we have up to 300,000 or 400,000 kilometers of road. So we need more roads. And we need to be able to improve on roads. But the question is, how are the roads being done? You raised the question of accountability. On Friday, after my asking, the ministry finally sent the EIA report. The EIA report was released in April 2025 of the Coastal Road. April 2025, and you can please fact check me. April 2025 was a month before the commissioning of the Coastal Road in May 2025. My colleague here, Leila Johnson-Salami, at a forum asked the minister, Umahi, for the EIA for the Coastal Road on the 1st of May 2024. I remember how they pushed Leila aside, but that dogged great woman stood still and asked that question. So I submit to you today that as at the time Leila asked that question in 2024, the EIA was not ready. Because the document sent by me from the government officials themselves in the ministry, through my colleague here, shows that April 2025 was the day the EIA was completed. That's a violation of the EIA Act. That's also a violation of other laws as regards national and regional and urban planning in the country. That's a question to accountability. Reading further in that EIA Act, I took my time over the weekend to read about 381 pages of that report of the Environmental Impact Assessment, the Environmental and Social Impact Assessment, so it was called the ESIA. And I discovered in a particular portion there that there was a talk about increased risk for flooding. Yes, they also put in mitigating factors of canals and things like that, but they talked about an increased risk for flooding. And when they talk about the increased risk for flooding, the question we should ask is, did we put those mitigant effects there? Because people have also talked about flooding in that area after the road. So that's a talk about accountability. That's a question about accountability. Then you now go further to things like, who are those that even get favored in the governmental contracts? I think there are many questions that we should constantly ask for the sake of accountability and public interest. So please, nobody's saying don't do roads. I am not against the coastal road. I want roads. In fact, we don't even have enough of them. But the argument is, how did we go about the accountability procedure laid down for fixing those roads? I think that's the biggest question in this country. And those are the questions we should ask. As regards the response to the 8.8 trillion, and Mr. Taiwo, I saw his response by the government yesterday stating that, yes, there's a distinction between project overrunning and other projects in the country and what is transpiring and what is happening as regards, even line items to newly created, regional development agencies. Yeah. Which I think they're another drain pipe, which I don't see the need for in the first place. But every region now wants one because one got one. Until today, we have not even gotten to the end of the hula baloo and the song and cry about the Southeast Regional Development Agency in the Senate that day. I told you the matter was just going to end like that. We've not gotten to the end of that.
Are they not meant to be investigating that though?
And we've not heard anything now. I mean, there are many things that they're supposed to be investigating that we're not hear. Didn't the senator come out to give evidence by saying that she didn't sign the documents that said Natasha Akpoti was investigated and suspended, that signature found his way to the as the Senate investigated such. So there are many things they don't get to investigate in this. You just hear it, and you will not see the end of the investigation. So, as I was saying as regards that one, yes, he has given his own clarity. I'm talking about Taiwo, but I would like to beg Mr. Taiwo to do something for that, for the sake of public accountability and integrity. All those projects that the 8.8 trillion was spent on, can you give us a line-by-line breakdown of all the projects so that we can investigate and compare and contrast? I think that will help us. A line-by-line breakdown of all the projects, line-by-line breakdown, so that we can see all what transpired. I yield the floor.
Hi.
Okay, very quickly. Let's start with the International Monetary Fund, IMF, in the Article 4 consultation, where they devoted a section of that report to the fact that the Nigerian government has been spending off budget and using that to hide deficit, almost about 2% of GDP, 83 trillion naira. And that this also raises transparency concerns and also has policy implications. But of course, the Minister of Finance, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, has dismissed this, saying that this is a misrepresentation. And the federal government of Nigeria does not run a shadow government. Well, this problem is not new. And it speaks to institutional credibility. It speaks to fiscal stability. It speaks to the opaqueness of how the Nigerian budgeting process is managed. Because the IMF also talked about procurement processes and how there is a lot of hanky-panky in that regard. Now, first question to ask is where did they get their data from? I assume that their data must have come from analysis of CBN accounts, of processes within the Nigerian government. And rather than see this as a kind of caution, as a kind of warning, since this is about, the entire integrity of the financial architecture being a familiar word in Nigeria, the Nigerian government is kicking back and talking about misrepresentation. Well, may I remind these new players in this space that this is not new. During the military, there was something called the Abacha loot, and the whole issue was about opaqueness in the management of Nigerian finances. Now, let me jump to the Jonathan administration, under which I served. At that time, the Jonathan administration was the government that introduced the Treasury Single Account. And the Ministry of Finance, as at that time, under Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, tried to harmonize accounts because it was discovered that many of the government agencies were spending outside the accounts, collecting revenue and not remitting same. So the attempt at that time was to block leakages and wastages within the system. So it's not as if the IMF is saying something that is new. However, it is curious because it was this same Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration in February 2026, I think, that introduced Executive Order 9. The meaning of Executive Order 9 was to block leakages and wastages in terms of revenues. And the Tinubu administration then said every revenue should go into a single account. And I said at that time that, okay, the Jonathan administration had also tried this, but it's also good to see the Tinubu administration insisting on transparency and accountability, particularly with regard to oil revenues and other profits, oil and gas profits, and all of that. Now it is curious because the same administration is now being accused by the International Monetary Fund of budget spending. I think the government owes Nigerians an opportunity for an explanation in the light of this grave implication that should not be swept under the carpet. Is it the fact that some agencies of government have accounts with the CBN? that is unknown to the appropriation budgeting process? Are there procurement processes funded by the CBN of Nigeria unknown to the Nigerian people? We have all kinds of mongrels under this administration, namely presidential this, presidential task force, presidential renewed hope, presidential whatever. There was even one that took over the functions of the Export Promotion Council that many Nigerians did not know about, as reported. And it was said to have opened about, is it 30 or 39 accounts somewhere. Now, there's something called worldwide service vote. Under worldwide service vote, even that is captured by the budgeting process in the appropriation budget. So are we talking about worldwide service vote that the government doesn't necessarily account for, which is like contingency fund under which the president can do, whatever he likes? So there are many questions, and I think that